5 things happen the moment you stop shrinking yourself. And most women who have been doing it for a long time do not even realize they have been doing it at all. I want to tell you about a woman named Lorraine. Lorraine is 54 years old, and she spent 11 years in a marriage where she made herself smaller every single day. Not because her husband told her to, not because he threatened her, but because somewhere in the first few years of the relationship, she noticed that when she made herself smaller, when she softened her opinions, when she stopped bringing up the things that bothered her, when she laughed at things that were not funny and stayed quiet, when she had things to say, things went more smoothly. And so she kept doing it and doing it until the version of herself she had shrunk down to was the only version she could find. My name is Patricia Hayes. Welcome to Patricia's Porch. The first thing that happens when you stop shrinking yourself is this. Your voice comes back. Not just the sound of it, not just the volume, I mean the substance of it. The particular quality of a voice that says what it actually means. When you shrink, the first thing to go is your full opinion. You learn to give the edited version, the softened version, the version that has been checked and rechecked for anything that might cause friction. And after a while, you do this so automatically that you stop noticing you are doing it. The edit happens before the thought even reaches your mouth. Lorraine told me that she had been having the edited version of every conversation for so long that she had started to wonder if she even had opinions anymore, or if she had simply dissolved into a shape that agreed with everyone and upset no one. The week after she and her husband separated, she went to dinner with her sister, and her sister asked her what she thought about something simple, something that had nothing to do with the marriage, and Lorraine opened her mouth. And what came out was her actual opinion, unedited, without checking it first. She said the look on her sister's face stopped her. Her sister said, "I have not heard you talk like that in years." And Lorraine realized that her sister was right. She had not talked like that in years. She had been so focused on keeping the peace in her marriage that she had taken the same habit into every other room in her life. She had been editing herself in front of her friends, her family, her colleagues, her children. She had shrunk into the same careful shape everywhere she went. The voice comes back gradually. It does not return all at once. At first it feels strange, like hearing a song you used to know and forgot you ever loved. And then it begins to feel like the most natural thing in the world. I remember this happening for me. I remember the first time I said something in a room and felt the full weight of it land. Not because it was shocking, not because it was unkind, but because it was entirely mine. That feeling is hard to describe, but I want you to know it is waiting for you. The second thing that happens is that you find out who your real friends are. This sounds like something people say. It sounds like a platitude. I promise you it is not. When you are small, you attract people who are comfortable with you being small. Some of them are comfortable with it because they are small themselves and feel safe around you. That is fine. That is just two people managing the same thing. But some of them are comfortable with you being small because it makes them feel larger. Because when you take up less room, they take up more. Because your smallness is in some quiet way useful to them. Those people will not be pleased when you start to expand. Lorraine lost 2 friendships in the 18 months after she separated. Both women had been in her life for years. And when she started to show up differently, when she started to speak her mind and take up space and stop apologizing for her needs, both women pulled back. One of them told her directly that she had become difficult. The other just stopped returning calls. Lorraine was hurt by this. I will not pretend that she was not. The end of a long friendship is a real loss, regardless of the reason. But here is what she told me a year later. She said, losing those 2 friendships was the clearest signal I could have been given. Because if my growth made me too much for them, then what they had wanted from me was my smallness. And I cannot mourn the loss of someone who needed me to be less than I was. In the same 18 months, she made 3 new friends. Women who came into her life specifically because she was showing up differently. Women who liked the full version of her, who found her interesting and funny and sharp, qualities that her old friends had never seemed to notice, possibly because she had never shown them. This is the pattern I have seen again and again. When you stop shrinking, some people leave, but the people who arrive are the ones who were looking for exactly you. The third thing that happens is that the relationship either becomes real or it ends. This is the one that frightens most women, and I understand why. When you have been small in a relationship for a long time, the relationship has been built around your smallness. The dynamic is established. The roles are set. You are the one who manages things quietly, who absorbs, who makes room, who keeps the peace. And the other person has settled into a version of the relationship that depends on you continuing to do all of that. When you start to take up your actual space, to say what you actually need, to bring the full weight of your personality back into the room, one of 2 things happens. Either the other person adjusts, they meet you where you are, the relationship, which may have felt stuck or flat or endlessly frustrating, begins to breathe. It becomes something real. Because now there are 2 actual people in it, instead of one person and one carefully managed smaller version of a person. Or the relationship ends. Not always dramatically. Sometimes it simply becomes clear that what the other person wanted was the smaller version. And when the smaller version is no longer available, there is nothing left for them to want. Lorraine's marriage ended. She would tell you herself that it was not her husband's fault, or at least not entirely. He had married a woman who managed herself around him. He had grown accustomed to that woman. When she changed, he did not know what to do with the new version. And neither, ultimately, did the marriage. But I have also sat with women whose relationships survived this. Women whose partners, when faced with the full version of the woman they married, rose to meet it. Where the return of a woman's full self turned out to be the thing the relationship had been waiting for all along. You cannot know in advance which way it will go. What I can tell you is that either outcome is better than the alternative. Either a relationship that becomes real or the end of one that was built on you being less than you are. Both of those outcomes honor you more than the arrangement you had before. The fourth thing that happens is that you get angry and then you get free. The anger comes first. I want to prepare you for this because it can be disorienting. When you have been shrinking for a long time and you finally stop, there is often a period, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, where you feel a particular kind of rage. Not at anyone specific, not about any single incident, but a deep accumulated anger at the years spent being smaller than you needed to be, at the energy that went into managing your own size, at the conversations you did not have, at the rooms you left without saying what you actually thought, at the life you might have had if you had started taking up space sooner. This anger is not bitterness. I want to be clear about that distinction because they feel similar from the inside, but they are very different things. Bitterness is anger that has calcified, anger that has given up on the future and decided to live in the past. This anger, the anger that comes when you stop shrinking, is not that. It is clarifying anger. It is anger that knows what it is angry about and knows that things will be different going forward. It has direction. It has a destination. Lorraine went through about 4 months of this. She said she would be driving and a conversation from 7 years earlier would come back to her, something she had not said, something she had swallowed, and she would feel a flash of fury at herself for having swallowed it. And then at the situation that had made her feel she needed to. And then one morning she woke up and the anger was simply not there. Not because she had resolved everything or forgiven everything or processed everything to its logical conclusion, but because it had done its work, it had shown her exactly what it needed to show her, and it had left. What was on the other side of it was something I have heard many women describe as quiet confidence, not loudness, not the swagger of someone who has decided to be difficult, just the settled knowledge of a woman who has returned to herself, who knows what she thinks, who knows what she will and will not accept, who does not need to shrink anymore because she is no longer afraid of what happens when she takes up space. The fifth thing that happens, and this is the one that surprises women the most, is that you stop being tired. Not just emotionally, physically. The exhaustion that has become so familiar that you stopped noticing it as exhaustion simply begins to lift. Because shrinking is work. That is something nobody tells you. People talk about the emotional cost of difficult relationships, but they do not always name what is happening on a physical level. Keeping yourself small requires constant, low-level effort. Every conversation is managed. Every response is filtered. Every feeling is checked before it is expressed or suppressed. Every room you walk into, you are performing a version of yourself that has been calibrated to take up the minimum amount of space. That performance runs all day. It runs in the background even when you are not thinking about it. It is the kind of effort that leaves you depleted at the end of every day without your being able to say exactly why. The kind of tired that sleep does not always fix, because the exhaustion is not just physical, it is the exhaustion of ongoing, sustained self-suppression. Lorraine told me that the strangest thing that happened after she separated was that she started sleeping differently. She had been a light, fragmented sleeper for years. She would wake in the night and lie there, her mind already working, already managing, already preparing for the next day of being small. And then one night, about 2 months after the separation, she fell asleep and stayed asleep. She woke in the morning and thought something was wrong because she felt rested. The effort of being small effort she had stopped registering as effort had simply ended, and her body, finally relieved of that constant low-grade work, had rested. I want to say something carefully here. I am not telling you that everything becomes easy the moment you stop shrinking. It does not. There is grief involved. There is disruption. There are relationships that will not survive the change and losses that are real. But the particular exhaustion of making yourself smaller than you are, that exhaustion ends. And what replaces it is not just rest. It is the energy of a woman who is finally spending herself on her own life. I want to say one more thing before I go. Shrinking is not weakness. I need you to hear that. The women I am describing, Lorraine, and the many others whose stories live inside this one, are not weak women. They are often the most capable women in every room they walk into. They shrink not because they have nothing to offer, but because they learned somewhere along the way that offering too much of themselves created problems, that being fully themselves was a risk, that taking up space came with a cost they did not want to pay. And so they paid a different cost, a quieter one that was spread out over so many years that it was hard to see as a cost at all. You do not have to keep paying it. The 5 things I have described today, the return of your voice, the clarity about who your people actually are, the truth of your relationship, the anger that clears into freedom, and the end of the bone-deep tiredness of smallness, those things are available to you. They are not waiting for the right moment. They are waiting for you to decide to stop. And I know that is not a small decision. I know the life you have built around being small feels safer than the life you might have to rebuild around being full. I know the gap between where you are and where that full version of yourself lives can feel enormous. But I also know that the women who cross that gap almost never look back and wish they had stayed on the other side. My name is Patricia Hayes. This is Patricia's Porch. I come here every week because I believe that the conversations we are not having in our daily lives are the ones that matter most. If something I said today found you at the right moment, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. There is a subscribe button below because I make a new episode every single week, and I would love to keep being a part of your life. Thank you for being here. I will see you next time.